I'm Courtney with Outlander Behind the Scenes. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades person. I've done a lot of different things. And right now I'm into writing and journalism, but there's always been an entrepreneurial thread through everything that I've done. I write articles and I do interviews with the cast and the crew. And I also do this discussion, which this is our fourth one. So we are talking about episode 409 today.
I'm Antoinette. I love Outlander. I'm a tennis fanatic freak. By profession, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I love to kick butt and take names. So here we go.
My name is Karmen, and I'm a retired professor of human anatomy, all fields of human anatomy, including gross anatomy, microscopic anatomy, embryology, neuroanatomy, and quite a bit of pathology, actually. I write the Outlander Anatomy blog, and I'm a faithful fan of Outlander, both the books and the TV series.
And I'm drinking sorrel.
What is that?
That is a traditional Jamaican holiday drink. It's basically a red bush that is boiled and steeped for like half a day. And then you put copious amounts of overproof white rum in it. And wine, if you have it, and lots of sugar.
That sounds good. That sounds sounds like a hangover. Wait.
Oh no, I've been drinking that since I was a child. So I wonder if I have any brain cells left.
I'm drinking a beautifully brewed cup of coffee.
I'm drinking eggnog, and it is not spiked. It's just straight eggnog, but it's locally made, and it's really, really good.
Let me sniff.
Okay, no, sorry. Eggnog without alcohol in it is not real eggnog. That's fake. I'm sorry. That's not allowed.
I'm a guest home, and I don't know where his liquor is. he's busy right now, and I didn't know where to find it. I don't feel comfortable just rummaging through his cupboards.
Let's go to overall impression. My overall impression of 409. I loved this episode. I was just riveted, and I thought it was fantastic. And the reason is I felt they were in the zone again. It was well written, well directed, well acted. It was well edited, and the pacing. I think that is a huge thing that our producers have really gotten down this season, as opposed to say season 2. When there's action, the pacing doesn't make us feel like, oh, we're all rushing around. So I really liked the balance between the emotional and the action. I just thought this episode was fantastic.
I'm Catherine. I am a family physician who loves Outlander for many reasons, and thanks to Outlander Anatomy, I'm actually enjoying the fact that I'm a physician watching.
That's sweet.
Are you drinking anything, Catherine?
I just ran right in. I will grab something. I have some. Since it's 2:00 here, I'll get some sparkling grape juice and pretend it's champagne.
Perfect. Well, so we just were telling our overall impressions of episode 409. Yeah, ready, Antoinette?
Yes. My overall impression of 409 is damn. That was bloody brilliant TV. The acting was superb. The character development, damn. 409 for me was just 2 thumbs up and 3 snaps.
Okay, Karmen.
Oh, I thought it was splendid. 5 stars, 2 thumbs up. Yes. Clapping, stomping. It was just wonderful. And I could see the talents of Tony and Matt, who are the co-writers, on display because of the quality of the writing that was in this episode. The character development, the scenes, the progression between the scenes, the continuity. They picked up threads from prior episodes and brought them into focus. I was delighted. I'm delighted with this episode.
Catherine?
I thought it was one of the best ever. I've watched it back to back several times now.
I think that's wonderful. 5 to be exact.
It's more than that now, actually. that was yesterday evening. I fell asleep watching it for I think the 7th time. It was just so well done. There was absolutely, I mean, every single thing that happened, I enjoyed, and I just love the fact that every time I thought it was going to come to an end, it just kept going. That was the best part of it.
To me, that went above 406 as it's my new favorite. Look at all the heads.
No.
Let's dive in. Antoinette, tell us about your favorite scenes.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? Actually, the first 5 minutes when the Brianna character came back to the room and was undressing, I was just riveted. I mean, I saw Sophie Skelton just disappear into Brianna, I think for the very first time. For me, I was just heartbroken, and that was one of my favorite scenes. My next favorite scene is probably when the 3 of them were looking over Fraser's Ridge, and Jamie was just taking these little sly looks at Brianna. You could see the love and the longing and everything in him. I felt like he just wanted to explode with joy, but he was restraining himself because he doesn't want to overwhelm her. My next favorite scene would have had to be when they met and, the meeting. Some people are saying reunion. I'm saying, what reunion? They've never met. Hell. So the meeting, and for me, I think that was, for me, why it was so good is because you could see the love and the longing from Jamie to her and her. I mean, that scene, the 2 of them were just magic. And my 4th favorite scene to shut me up is when Brianna and Kat and her mother meet, reunite, and embrace. I could go on and on, but I won't hog the floor. Those 4 were my absolute standouts.
Karmen?
Instead of doing first, second, instead of grading them, I'm going to mention the most touching scene, which I thought was when Bree meets Jamie. I was weeping, and I'll come back to it for Best Actor, but I just thought it was really well done. I agree with Antoinette. I do not think that it was overdone. It wasn't like a cheering section or, oh my God, aren't we lucky? Or how did this happen? It was just a quiet embracing a moment and accepting that this is where they were and what brought them together, and the amazement that could have happened to them, and the appreciation. The most heartbreaking scene was at the beginning when Bree is performing her ablutions, her face, the array of emotions that I know were going on inside of her. It was just heartbreaking, and it's one of the best that I have seen Sophie do in her acting. The most realistic was Jamie beating Roger. Oh, wow. That was really realistic. And we'll come back to it later, I am sure. But he just pounded the crap out of him. I would rank them all as just really terrific scenes. And then there are a bunch more that are worth mentioning too, but I'll pass the baton.
My favorite was the Jamie and Bree scene. I wept several times, like ugly wept in this episode. Yeah, because it was just so beautiful, and it's such an iconic scene from the book, and they just got it so right. And I was just, Sam just killed that. Both of them were great, but all the emotion, loved that one. I really went back and forth because I did rank them about what my next favorite scene. It was like, and then this one, and then I mean, my favorite scenes goes off the page. But I think it was Claire and Bree in the herb field when she tells her about the rape. I thought that was so touching between the two of them and so well acted. And Katrina's face just tells it. She really felt like she was being violated in the telling of that. For her child, you know. And then I actually really, really liked the lead up to the Roger pounding. When Lizzie's telling Jamie, I thought Caitlin does a great job as Lizzie. And, you know, yeah, she's tall, but I've kind of forgotten that. But when she's telling him and you're watching him go through that transformation of like, yeah, what? Are you sure? And then just the anger and how she just delivered that. I thought that was a great scene. Jamie and Claire in bed when he says, she's a gift from me to you. I mean, I just thought that was a beautiful, beautiful scene.
My favorite scenes, like asking what my favorite book or favorite child is. It was just so, everything was so well done. But I have to say that my favorite scenes were the ones where Murta was reacting to Brianna. His joy for Jamie came through so much. I found myself smiling every time he came on the screen because he was just so overjoyed. And the warmth came through. Even because when he interacted with her, when they're getting water in the stream, when he first met her, when they were sitting around the table, when they were at the whiskey mill, I mean, the distillery, is like every single scene he looked at her with the same kind of warmth and awe that Jamie did. And I thought that was, those scenes really touched me. When Jamie was telling Claire that Brianna called him Da, the giddiness in that line and the way he reacted was it was just so sweet. It was so well acted. It was so well done, but it was like almost like a little boy saying, you know, he was just so excited about that. And then my other, I wouldn't call it a favorite, but just my favorite acted was when Brianna came into the room. She immediately wanted to wash. And it was just like, that is the common reaction, of course, to anyone, just of being violated, just wanting to wash off what happened. And not wanting to be touched by anyone. And that just seemed, she just did such a phenomenal job in that scene. I ached for her when I watched that.
Standouts. I wonder who that's going to be. And I also wanted you guys to pick your favorite costume and your favorite set as part of this. Antoinette, would you like to lead us off?
Standout in terms of acting. It's hard for me to pick one because I thought all of them just brought it this episode. I loved Sam's performance because it was restrained. He delivered everything that he was feeling, all of the emotion, but it was not over the top. It wasn't hammed up. It was believable, you know, on a level that is rarely achieved for me in terms of television acting. There was never once that he took me out of the story. And, you know, it's not even a lot of the dialogue. It's just these little looks that he kept giving his daughter throughout the whole interaction, the little sly looks. You know, you could just see that he just wanted to just smush her with love and adoration, but he held it in because he realized that, listen, she is conflicted about being with them there and feels like she's betraying her father. So he does not want to overwhelm her, you know, and I thought that is just so Jamie, you know, to put everybody else's feelings before his own. How he held himself, everything just spoke volumes to me. And that's the kind of acting I love where it's not over the top and overwrought, but you just feel it. So Sam for me was just superb. Sophie, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. She really delivered. So her performance from start to finish for me was a standout. From the very first scene to the very last scene. Well, not the last scene, the last interaction between her and Katrina when she was telling her about the rape. She just had me by the throat and by the heart from the beginning to the end. Katrina just continues to bring it. I just marvel at how consistently she hits the mark on her character. You know, while Jamie had to be restrained, she didn't have to be, because this was her baby. And you know, that first hug, and oh gosh, she just knocked it out of the park for me again. I loved Marta, and I was very relieved to see that the strain that had been created in previous episodes, I think where he referred to, he was sort of very dismissive of Jamie, and I was afraid that they were going to throw a spanner in the works of this relationship in order to create drama. And so I was so relieved to see Marta sliding into his familiar role, you know, as God's godfather, protector, you know, and taking the piss out of Jamie. I love that. I loved Duncan's performance. What I love about this set is that even though it's beautiful and well done, it's not a character. It doesn't distract me from the story. It doesn't take me out of the story. It is just so beautifully done and functions. It's efficient, but it doesn't, you know, distract me from the story. So I thought the sets were beautiful. I love the music in this episode too. You know, it was so evocative and so well done. Courtney, you have to stop me, you know, because I'll be here talking 2 hours about, because I really love this episode.
You stopped yourself. I don't have to do anything. You guys are like on autopilot. I love it. Karmen.
Thank you.
Standouts for you.
Standout for me, Sam's stood and delivered. When he met Bree, as I watched his face, his eyes began to tear before our very eyes. And that is, to me, an example of true acting, because a lot of times they'll cut, you know, and I'm sure they're adding tears to a person's eyes in the cut. But this was a continuous scene. You could see him tearing right before your eyes. And that requires that a person has emotions that they're accessing in order to pull that off. And I was just delighted by that. And all of the rest of the episode, I know he probably, or I don't know, but he never seems to get the recognition he deserves. But the man is a fantastic actor. I thought that Sophie did an excellent job. I think she is best when she is portraying strong emotion, though. When she is in an ordinary conversation, there's something about the way that she delivers her lines that sound more like she's delivering lines. But when she gets into these scenes where she's called upon to really put her heart and soul into them, she's very believable to me in that circumstances. So that's a tiny little bit of we're not criticizing much today, but that's a tiny little bit of an observation that I have made. I also think that I'm no longer concerned about Lizzie. I think she's great. She really is. I don't care whether she's 3 inches taller or whatever. She's Lizzie, and I thought she did a wonderful job too. I thought everybody else were solid. You know, John Bell, and he's just fabulous. Ed is, as Bonnet, is a little bit too over the top, I would say. You know, I don't think that he ruins it or anything, but I just think it's a little bit too much of a caricature. My favorite set is the cabin and the surrounding, the garden and the lean-to. The lean-to is fabulous. It really is. Its door, I was just like, oh, look at that. You know, it's just so wonderful. So, and I think that the set, John Gary Steele, he's so fabulous, but Wilmington is pretty amazing too. If you look at the detail and everything there, It's just a wonderful example of a frontier town. And then my fave costume has to be that skirt that Bree from the Liar's Spring that Bree was wearing when she met Jamie, along with the knitted shawl and the pinched waist. Oh my Lord, that was just, she looked gorgeous in that outfit. And my favorite on Jamie is when he is wearing his fur scarf when they're looking for bees.
I'm going to acknowledge the writers on this one, because I feel Tony and Matt really get these characters, and that comes through. They use the dialogue from the book, and then they weave in the creative changes. The creative changes are there, but we don't notice them because they're so seamless. Antoinette, in an earlier discussion, you talked about that sometimes we don't see Sam at his best because you felt like it's because the writing is not there for him. And I just really appreciated the range they let him explore and do in this episode. He did every emotion of, tenderness and sadness and giddiness and rage. And I really believe that you're correct, because you could just see him reveling in that, just, I get to like act and go to my extremities of my acting skills. And he really did it for me. I loved seeing him be so embodied as Jamie. And when that all comes together, to me, it's just so fulfilling. I feel like it was like season 1, even between the two of them, like that scene in the bed where he says about, this is my gift to you and yours to me, and she called me Da. It felt so natural. They felt so comfortable. Like I really believed these guys are together. They're married. They've been, some of the earlier episodes, it didn't feel that way to me. So I really loved it. And then Sophie, I agree, Karmen, with you exactly. So that she, on the emotional scenes, she just killed it. Her face when she meets Jamie and when she goes through, washing herself after the rape, telling Claire about it in the herb field, and even getting to know Jamie, it was all very believable. I thought she did a great job. Katrina's always amazing. Same here. I'm Lizzie. I'm on team Lizzie. My favorite costume was Bree's hunting the bees costume. That patchwork top with those kick-ass pants. I would wear those in a heartbeat. I'd wear that whole outfit. And that hide cape with the fur. Dude, I was like, yeah. Daniela Boone. My favorite set in this episode was that tree that the honeycomb was in. Just a little BTS on that. John Gary Steele, I don't know if you guys know, but he has an affinity for trees, and he goes and finds amazing trees and likes to spend time with them and feels they have energy and wisdom. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, look at that tree. Anyway, so yeah, those are my standouts.
Oh gosh, I have so many standouts. I mean, Jamie across the board. He it was just perfection. I mean, there's nothing else, no other way of describing it. I mean, it was perfectly acted, perfectly written, perfectly produced. It was just the whole thing from beginning to end. There was not a misstep anywhere. The things that can't be scripted, that he did, that in the past I have said that I can kind of see little pieces of Sam in there. Not this time. I mean, not at all. I completely forgot I was watching someone acting. It was really, really believable. The other, I felt the standout was, interestingly, was Stephen Bonnet, and not for a good reason. I felt that out of all the performances, his just sort of didn't measure up to everyone else's. Even though they truncated Roger a little bit and he didn't have a whole lot to do other than just kind of walk around with a compass and ask for the snow, he still, I still think that he did shine quite a bit, even in that little bit of time that he was on screen. As far as the set, for me, it's the walls. I love looking to see what the wall colors are going to be, what the wood grain is going to be in both the tavern and in the cabin. It's almost like you can smell warm brick. It just smells. You could smell the warmth. I mean, it just seemed so realistic and so vibrant. The wall color in the I guess in the dining room area was this dark green, but it was it was paneled, and it had a gloss to it, but it looked like a gloss of age, not a gloss of paint, and it was just so realistic. The wall colors just drive me nuts for a good reason. As far as the standout outfit was Ian's. I loved Ian's when he was on the boat with his it was so clear he had been spending a lot of time with the Cherokee because of he had I can't remember the name of them, but the little divots on his collar. He had the knife around his neck. He had woven material around his boots. It just so everything. He just had so many extra things put into his outfit that clearly came from the Cherokee, and so I thought that was pretty cool. And it was very subtle. It wasn't like, guess what? He's been spending all this time with the Cherokee. Instead, it was just subtly put in there to make it obvious without it being obvious.
Right on. I love it. We always have different stuff. It's so great. We're awesome.
Well, you know, what can I say?
What worked for you and what didn't, if anything? Antoinette, are you ready to go on that?
One of my things that I've been, talking about as we've been talking about the season so far is the character development and the layers, and making these characters more than one-dimensional. And I thought that in this episode, the writing, as you say, Courtney, was just so brilliant. And we got to see not only the characters develop, but how their development meshed with the development of the story that was being told. That for me all came together. The character development driving the story. Oh, before I go on, I was the one who said I was just looking forward to Jamie beating Roger to a pulp. And, that did happen. So kudos to me for putting that out there in the universe and having it happen. But what also worked for me is that for the first time, I felt something for Roger. I was never a fan of book Roger, but I didn't mind season 1 Roger, and I didn't mind season 3 Roger. Season 4 Roger, however, but in this episode, I felt Roger. I said, oh my goodness, am I really feeling something for this character? So that really unexpectedly worked for me. For the little tidbits that he had, he was so good in them. By the time Jamie had finished pulverizing him, I was saying, oh my God, poor Roger. What didn't work? It's hard for me to find something that didn't work, Courtney. I do like being a contrarian, but I can't even find one thing that didn't work. Dang, no, that's not good. I gotta find something. Come back to me on that. Let me think about that.
To me, it seems that writing is the essential core of what happens first before all of the other things come together. And if you have a fantastic script and you have other things happening very well too, then you've got a fantastic production. And that's what 409 was. There was a switch in positions between Jamie and Claire when Bree is telling Claire about the rape, and she said, I should have fought harder. I should have struggled more. I should have tried to stop him. And it's Claire that says, it's not your fault. You couldn't have changed it. And that's it's almost a full chapter, as I recall, in the book, where Jamie shows Bree why it was not possible, even as strong a woman as she is in the book, she wouldn't have been able to stop a man of any size. And I mean, it would have taken an enormous amount of time in this episode in order to demonstrate that. So I think that it was a good idea to flip those roles. And yet not to let go of that element of it, because I think it is important for Bree to be able to feel that she did her best under the circumstances to protect herself. She didn't go in there asking for it, or whatever women get blamed for. I thought it was interesting that Tom Burley, who is not a character in the books, is probably the man that saved Roger's life, because he's the one that's riding by in the wagon when Ian says, "Oh, that's Tom Burley." And so then Jamie stops beating Roger up, and they put him on a horse, and off he and Ian go. And I also love that Ian said, "Shall I kill him?" Which he would have done, no doubt, if his uncle had asked him to. And Jamie said, "No, I won't make a murderer out of you." And that is so Jamie. It's just always thinking about the other person. I just thought that was a small tidbit, and this episode was just filled with those little nuggets here and there that I was just slurping, like a cream cone. Don't you say anything, you girls. And we who love Outlander we really appreciate it when that happens. And thank this group. They did awesome. You know how I always look at tiny little details. So I noticed in the bee hunting scene that when they come upon the yellow flowers, those are primroses, I'm quite sure, yellow primroses. But then they show a clip of a bee in another yellow flower. It is not a primrose. I don't know what it is, but its leaves are different. It's a different flower, and it's a bumblebee. You don't get honey from bumblebees. So when Jamie said, "Well, we'll follow these bees," I thought it was interesting that they put a bumblebee in there instead of a honeybee. It's not a big deal, but it's just one of the things that caught my eye. In the opening credits, those are honeybees. I've had hives, but I have had beehives, and those are honeybees in the opening credits, without doubt. But the one that they show at the close-up on the hunt scene is a bumblebee.
I have to give Karmen a high five. She found me something to carp on. Yes, yes.
No,
how dare they?
Wait a minute. I have to just say, okay. Beekeeper, dressing deer,
hunting deer,
hunting deer, dressing deer,
killing snakes,
picking cotton,
being able picking cotton. Oh, and the sweat lodge. What else?
And let's not forget hoeing.
Oh yes. I mean, that is just fabulous.
That's
just so interesting. You need to write a book, and I will read it. Yeah. I just want to read about from beginning to end all the things you've done.
And honestly, all the creative choices, really, all of them worked for me. And it's like you said, that line about "I won't make you a murderer," that's not in the book, but it's completely Jamie. It's completely Jamie, and the fact that Claire found the ring, that's not in the book. That whole scene completely worked. The whole, to me, that they all gathered in Wilmington and in 408, that worked. And then the follow on in 409, and the fact that they were sitting on a bench there instead of a bench out at Fraser's Ridge. Mm-hmm. All those creative changes for me, I feel like sometimes the writers and producers think that fans are just waiting for each time they don't do the book. It's not that. It's when the story's not served by the changes. I think that's when we have an issue. 406, 408, and 409, this one, And that I got the hashtag all wrong. I was so excited after I watched it.
I saw that.
I was sending out blood of my blood because we just saw Roger get bloody. I think. I think this one should have been called Blood of My Blood for a lot of reasons. But I feel like they've figured that out this season, and it just so works. And I hope they just bottle that up and serve it up on a regular basis.
When we get an episode like this and we see how well they do it, it just makes me so mad that they're not able to deliver that all the time. I have my sign already made up. I'll be picketing somewhere, something.
I don't doubt it. So my little tiny things that I hesitate to even bring up, because I noticed that wasn't a honeybee also. And it felt to me like Bree had makeup on. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah, I noticed her skin was flawless. And I remember thinking, wow, her skin's flawless when she was in the lean-to with Claire. When they were hugging, they had a close-up of her face. And I saw it. But I didn't think makeup, though. Although, no, I did, because I wondered what foundation they used on her.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but it just did seem like she had makeup on to me. Like they were trying, maybe they were just, especially in contrast to Katrina, she had stuff on, but they made her more less colorful, and maybe that was to accent that. I don't know.
And maybe it's natural, but just to get my point in before Antoinette starts again. Were you done, Courtney, by the way?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I did think in the father-daughter meetup scene that Jamie had an awfully big bladder.
I have something to say about that when we get to the medical stuff.
He was peeing for a really long time.
Typical for a 50-year-old with a large prostate. But anyway, go ahead.
That's exactly. I was like, does he have a large prostate? If we'd watched the beginning and he would have like taken a long time to start peeing, then I would have been like, okay, I got it. But let's see. Oh, I did think it was interesting that Jamie was winded walking up the hill and Bree wasn't.
I saw that too. I thought maybe it was just showing his age, because they can't really age him too much.
Right.
But then I remember them thinking that he was like a billy goat. That's how Claire, like he's a mountain goat, and he could just kind of, shoot up the hills easily. Yeah,
and I don't know how much hiking she's doing in Boston, but in the 60s, probably not that much. But what was the deal with that line when she said, "Lizzie, don't run. It's not ladylike, remember?"
Oh, yeah. What was that?
What was that? I mean,
I caught that too.
That didn't make any sense to me.
You got me.
Yeah, there must have been something edited that made that
we didn't see. Yeah. Because that didn't make any sense.
Well, maybe it's from a prior episode and Bree's running and somebody says that to her. I don't know how much. But anyway, those are mine.
To tack on to a little bit of what Karmen said about the scene about her talking to Claire about fighting rather than Jamie. In the book, that scene was so brutal. It was so much later in their relationship that they had developed, and they didn't have time to develop that within the show. And I think it would have come off as very mean if Jamie had done it, in the way it was written in the book anyway. And that's why I thought, okay, that works, because I was worried actually they were going to put that in there with Jamie. And I was like, it will disrupt their relationship, but they didn't. They used Claire. The thing that stood out to me was when she couldn't remember Marceli's name. The way that was written, I'm like, okay, is it because you don't remember who she is? You're pretending you don't because of what happened with what's her name, Leary, which never came up. Which I thought, okay, that's kind of odd. You're sitting around telling stories. It seems like the Learys. Maybe he thought it would be embarrassing, or she was still trying to process the information she received. But is it that she didn't make the connection between Joni's sister and
maybe they're showing that she's in shock?
Maybe. And that's a good point. Early on in the season, I felt like Jamie and Claire didn't have a whole lot of warmth, and they seemed more like cousins. And then in this episode, there was so much warmth, and it was very obvious, and it was even commented on by Bree. And I'm wondering if it was brilliance on their part that they were still getting to know each other, and now they've gotten to the point where they've gotten comfortable and they're comfortable with each other again, and so that old warmth has come back. It could just be writing, it could be directing.
It could be also that this is episode 409 and they shoot sequentially.
Yeah.
And literally, you know, they've had all this time to practice being, I don't know.
Yeah. The other, the misstep I felt was Stephen Bonnet's portrayal. I just felt like he was just a little bit too animated and too, it wasn't subtle like all the other performances. Seems like if I were in a room with him doing that, I would just like, who is that guy? Whereas everything else I wouldn't have noticed.
Right.
You know, so that's the only reason I think in a lesser episode that would have been fine. But in this one, with everyone doing such a phenomenal job and everything done with such subtlety but power, you know, it was powerful and subtle. And his was not subtle and not very powerful. Well, I really don't have a lot of criticism, but what I thought was doing really well, the things that were done that made medical sense. And normally, and I have to say, and I do thank you for this, Karmen, normally I don't even watch for that. And I did this time. And I thought, oh, look at that. They're having a 50-year-old guy standing against the wall with the poor stream and peeing for a long time. That's, you know, but that's realistic.
I wonder, you said one time, is it a happy accident? Did they say, now Jamie's going to have an enlarged prostate, and so, you know, this is going to be a long scene, or did they need that long for her to walk, you know?
Walk in. And I thought his acting, he was so brilliant. I mean, even the embarrassment of when he turned around, he realized there was someone standing in the walkway, and he's just like, okay, well, you know. There is one thing I did forget. There is one thing that stood out, was the fact that he touched her face right after going to the bathroom. I was like, oh. Anyway.
Spoken like a true doctor. I mean, yeah. When Richard and Bree, when Roger and Bree got together, I always think about that. Ooh, he's been on that ship, and
they stink. Yeah. But one thing else, so I didn't mention about the set, the mud. Every time they walk through the mud, I just think, oh my gosh, can you imagine living during that time when everything was muddy? And that was something that I think stands out about the sets, how they have everything muddy and gross, and you just can't help but look at people and think, oh, I know they smell.
Will you people stop bringing your 21st century sensibilities to the frontier?
Let's move on to our big themes. And Antoinette, you can kick us off.
Oh, wow. This episode brought me back to what I've always perceived as the big theme of Outlander, which is people's relationships and how they grow as people and grow in their relationships through all the different things that happen to them. You know, and this episode embodied that for me, because we saw the relationships grow, deepen, you know, take on importance and have consequence. The kindling of the relationship between Jamie and his daughter, the rekindling of Claire, you know, as a mom to Brianna, that whole, you know, that was the theme that I took away from it. And again, made me fall in love with Outlander again. I'm hoping that as we go forward with the last 4 episodes of the season, that, you know, the relationship and characters going to their extremes and finding redemption and love and all of that together. You know, I hope we see more of that going forward, because that is what speaks to my heart when I watch Outlander.
I thought it's akin to what Antoinette just said, and that is that I think the theme of family is very rich in this episode. It is in many of the Outlander episodes, because it's a core part of Diana's books. But this is an interesting family. It has a collection of people that a godfather, a biologic daughter, a non-biologic adopted son, a nephew who becomes a son. You know, it just a son who lives with another man and being raised by another man, and I think it is a testament to one of the core principles that I see in Diana's writings, and that is that a family is what you call it. Those people who bring the love and security, solidity, constance to your life that makes it a joy and gives us joy. And that, I think, is a very important theme, especially in this particular episode. Another one that I thought was very well done is the push-pull between Frank and Jamie in this episode, and Bree's wrestling with that. It wasn't in our faces, but it was mentioned here and there. Jamie was wise enough to acknowledge that he's not trying to take the place of her father. And she says, "What would you have me call you then?" She said, "I don't know what to call you." And he said, "Just make it simple, call me Dad." And so she's modestly pleased about it. She doesn't show, a big to-do about it on her face, but I think that she's internalizing that. And she also was watching him considerably throughout this episode. Yes, he was watching her, but she also watched him. And so I think that that's really important, that Jamie acknowledges it, and that the writers included this, that he does acknowledge that Frank raised a child that was not his. And he did the best he could with her. He probably did the best with his marriage. I think both he and Claire probably did. They just couldn't make it work. And, but I just think that that's an ongoing theme in the books. And I think that it was acknowledged and honored here.
Diana has summed up each book with one word. And you probably know that, Karmen, and her word for this book is family. Mm-hmm. And I saw on Twitter that, somebody was saying something about showing pain, and she's basically said, yeah, it's important to show pain in stories, but the whole point of Outlander is the fact that people go through trials and tribulations, mm-hmm. and they bloom again. They live to bloom again. My big theme goes to the producers of just what I said before. Stick with this formula. Like, this formula works. Give these actors great writing so that they can show their range and we can enjoy that. And we can tell this. I mean, the story, you don't have to rewrite the story. The story's there. And you could still make it interesting for yourself and for us the way they have in these recent episodes. It just made me so happy. That's why I get so excited, because to be able to see, particularly Sam and Katrina, I just saw them like eat this episode up as actors because they just had so much to work with. And I think mm-hmm. coming in, they did season 3 and then they went directly into season 4. And so they carried over a lot of the same writers that they had in season 3. Some of them worked and some of them didn't. But I also know that when you're trying to produce something while you're trying to go on and do something else immediately is hard. And you cannot have the oversight to it that you probably could if there was a break. So I feel like that, yeah, we can see when Ron D. Moore writes something. He's an incredible writer. We can see when it's Tony and Matt, who totally get these guys. And then we can see when it's not those guys. Yeah. So, and some of them, like I think the one wrote 406, it was the Shayna.
Oh.
What was that called?
Oh, gosh.
It was Blood of My Blood, wasn't it?
Was that Blood of My Blood?
Yes.
Okay. But anyway, she's new and she was fantastic and she totally grasped, Mm-hmm. And I want to also mention the director, David Moore.
David Moore, he did a job.
Yeah.
Because that's the person on the day ultimately deciding how the shot's going to go and soliciting, pulling from the actors. Yeah, no, not quite like that, and a little bit more like this. This guy was really, really good too. So anyway, that's my big theme is yes, 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 yes. Do it more. Whatever you have to do this more.
My big theme was warmth. I found myself smiling throughout most of this. Even in the scenes that were that I cried, I still was smiling while I was crying. Even if when there was a slow burn, like there was a slowness between Bree and Jamie, but it was still warm all the way through. But his looks were warm, and then it became their interactions. The warmth from Murtaugh, the warmth from young Ian, the warmth from Lizzie towards Bree. It was just everything. It was all about love, caring, compassion towards, like we said, family, but it was so warm and so well portrayed. Even, believe it or not, even with even Bonnet, you could tell that he liked Roger, even though he didn't treat him very well, and he's a bit of a jerk, but that's his personality. But you could tell that there was something about Roger that he still had the connection to. So that's my overall theme. Just warmth, warmth, and more warmth.
One more thing just to say about Sam while we're giving glowing remarks. This is one time where I feel like what I know of Sam Heughan as a person, I don't think anybody else could have played Jamie in this particular episode. I mean, he's Jamie, but the way he warmed up and sort of loosened Bree up with just his personality. A lot of male actors would not really be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a Sam thing. The way he moved in and he put his arm around her and she's a little bit like, oh, and then he's like, you're my blood and, bones or whatever he says. What is this?
Flesh and bone. Flesh and blood.
Thank you. You're my blood and bone. Blood of my blood. Bone of my bone. Yeah. And, he just can walk that little line where we believe it. And we go like, yeah, that's Jamie. He's a forceful man. He's in the 1700s. But he can do it in a way that isn't a particularly, I felt like when they first saw each other in that scene, one of the reasons that she fell apart was she felt his love and warmth and she had just been raped. And it
was like, I'm safe.
That was a big part of why she fell apart.
And that was
aside from this is my real dad, it was like, oh my God, somebody is here. I feel protected just being in his presence, Anyway.
But Courtney mentioning that scene where he was saying, you're my flesh and blood. It's like what he was saying was so powerful, but he was saying in a way, he was like both honest and awkward at the same time. And you would expect that in that situation based on how, soon the whole point was for them to bond. So they hadn't bonded up to that point. And so it was just, I thought it was well done. I think it would have been very tempting to make that a very mushy scene, where he very solemn, very somber, and he tells her, you're my flesh. He didn't. It was like, it was goofy in a way. And that worked because they needed to be awkward because they were still in that awkward phase.
I thought it was really touching when the Murtaugh and Jamie are talking and they are saying, Bree, and there's this subtle little thing going on with Ian too, and she wants to know what's going on. And Bree, well, no, it's not a Gaelic word, but it is a Scots word. And then she finds out it means a disturbance. And then the other one, which is in the book, and then the other ones, which I liked, is when he uses the Gaelic words for my darling and my blessing. Oh my gosh. Well, that is so tender. It just right now, I think I'm gonna.
What I loved about that was almost like he was embarrassed and he didn't want her to see his face when he was saying it, so he walked off. And then she smiled behind him as he appreciated it. This is the whole thing was well done in terms of human nature. One of the things that kind of gets to me sometimes is that they have interactions that are just not natural in human nature. And so I felt that this, every single scene was done in a way that it was believable that anyone in any time having that same conversation would have behaved in the same way.
Going back to that scene, I loved that when they were walking up the hill too. It's just heart melting. And he's saying it to his daughter, and Gaelic is that way anyway. It's so poetic. It's just a very romantic, touching, poetic language. But the other thing when they're sitting there, which is very believable to me, because Diana is a woman and she writes Jamie. So if it weren't done as well as it is, we'd all be like, oh, no man would do that. You know what I mean? So Jamie is that he has a high emotional intelligence. And so he realizes, and we buy this because Brianna is, prickly as a person and particularly in this situation. So then he finds a way to go meet her and talk about Frank and to even and authentically get in touch and be like, yeah, I'm actually grateful to him. And I had to give you up. And, and that's, I think, what wins her over is that particular moment when he can join her and meet her and actually shed light and praise on her father so that then she can feel like we're on the same team, instead of it's him or him. I just think that's one of the geniuses of that character.
Exactly. Which is why I get so pissed when the Jamie character is not well written, because there's so many layers to that character. And if the Jamie character is well written and has and then the interactions with the Jamie character and the other characters work better when the Jamie character is well written. When the Jamie character is just one-dimensional, Highlander hero, save somebody, then the interactions with the other characters don't seem authentic. They all seem inauthentic, and that is one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I've had an issue with certain episodes. And I hark back to what you said, Courtney, about the writing and about how you can see the difference sometimes when other writers who probably don't get the characters as some others, the difference is marked. You can see it.
Does the same person edit each episode? Is it the same editors? I never looked to see.
It's a combination. I think Ron still has a hand in the editing because he really enjoys that part. That'd be interesting to go back and look at the credits. And
I don't pay attention to the credits in that regard. Oh, one thing we do need to mention. I don't know why everyone's so up in arms about Brie and her appearance. One of the things I wish they had done more was to show their profiles together when they were standing there looking out, and they kept doing these quick flashes of their faces together. And then she is the perfect combination of Sam and Kate. And I'm not talking about their characters. Her face, anatomically, is a good mesh of the two. Yes. And when she stands next to Claire, she looks like Claire. And when she stands next to Jamie, she looks like Jamie. And they didn't play on it as much as I think they could have. I think I paused it. That's how much I wanted to look at their faces together. So I paused at those scenes. And I think that was just a brilliant act of casting.
Actually, I agree with you, Kathy. I saw the resemblance. She has the same pure profile as Sam, and you can see that when they're side by side. But there's something of Katrina in her cheekbone area. Yeah, right here. So I agree with you there. I think they, as usual with the casting, I think they got the casting right, height notwithstanding. But in terms of her being believable as a child of both of them, yeah, I think that was spot on as well. This is terrible. Have I said anything bad about the episode yet? I'm losing my street cred. What?
Not at all. Not at all. Because, fundamentally, we all love it, so it's okay when it's brilliant. Hey, we can just be happy about it.
Yeah.
What I think is,
I've watched it 4 times already.
Wow.
what I think is interesting about the Brianna character, and I may have said this before, is that's the one character that Diana was stuck with and had to just didn't arise organically, which most of her characters do. I mean, all of them do. And so I think it's interesting that it's taken Sophie a while to find her way in that character. And I also noticed that when I'm listening to Davina Porter, the one person that takes me out of the story when she does her is Brianna. I'm like, why does everybody have such a hard time with this character? And I think it's because she's the one who Diana had to go like, okay, now we have this kid, they're pregnant, so I gotta,
figure out
and it took me a long time. I didn't like her for books and books.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, Diana was very difficult to write. She says she was a hard character for her to figure out, what she was going to do with her. And usually, I think the stuff kind of flows in Diana's brain. She conjures her stuff up, but I do think that I've read her. Yes, exactly. But I have read that where she has said that Bree was particularly challenging.
Well, she likes her children.
Yes.
And Bree wasn't a likable child. And so it would be she tends to pull from places that I'm sure she has very little contact with. I mean, I get harping back to Dr. Abernathy. When I read that was where, for me, her brilliance came through, because I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my uncle. I'm like, how in the world did she, how did she manifest this person? It was like this, it's like this intellectual with swag. I mean, that's with swagger. That's basically, how I saw him. And I thought that was brilliant. And it was brilliantly done. And it was done in a way that where he wasn't a caricature, which is very unusual for books, especially for people written who are not of the same culture, who are not of the same race, who are not of the same gender. They tend to fall into caricatures, which she doesn't do anywhere. I mean, British Soldier, she writes about a woman. She writes about a young, like Ian. I mean, how do you write about, how can you conjure up Blackjack Randall and young Ian? I mean, the same brain brought those two to us, and how different are they? I mean, they're like polar opposites, but they're the same brain that they're created. And that's why when she said she has difficulty creating Bree, it was difficult, because I can't imagine. I mean, her detail of every single character is so spot on, and she never loses their character, their who they are as a person. Mm-hmm. So for her to have that difficulty with Bree says a whole lot.
Well, I think it's not an entirely intellectual process for her, is the point. And Bree was intellectually planted because Claire was pregnant when she went through the stones, so she had to have a baby, and then so I just find it interesting that reverberates out into the show.
I'm trying to remember the word that she used for characters like Bree. She has mushrooms like Lord John Grey that just pop up. Then she has historical figures that are real in time, and she had like George Washington, and she has to figure out how she's going to use them. But then her other characters where she has to use them, there's a name for that, and I don't remember.
I believe it's onions, hard nuts, and mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I think Bree might be a hard nut. Let's go to the medical stuff. I was thinking about Roger's beating, my God, and that's why I was saying, cut me, Mickey, because his face looks like Rocky when they throw him on the. All I could think about is, oh my God, his head's gonna explode from all the swelling while he's over that horse upside down. He'll never make it.
He doesn't have a fracture of his orbit.
Yeah.
Because he hit him, with his fist, but the bones on the inside of the bony orbit for each eye and the floor is very, very thin. And very often when a person gets hit in the eye, and it really looked like he was getting hit more in the nose, that you can fracture the orbits. But anyway, I actually thought that was the makeup on that was extremely well done. You can see at the end that he split his lip because his teeth are showing over here on the left side. It's easy to miss that, but it's there. He hit him, I counted about 10 times, and he hit him hard right in the face, you know, and the nose. And the eyes do swell up just like that if they get hit in the right place, break enough blood vessels. And boy, he sure pummeled him. That was just really.
I mean, he kicked him in the face too.
Did he kick him?
He
see that.
Punched him, then kicked him, and then kept punching him.
The first punch, the force on that thing, like I was almost like, how did they even film that? Because you can feel the rage and then just the power of those punches.
Yeah,
they had to have had him punching something else.
Because I was wondering why he was unconscious, and he kicked him. I think that's what rendered him unconscious. So he just kept hitting an unconscious man.
Oh, I have to go back and look at that. I missed that. But when they put poor Roger they're lifting him up on the horse, his poor face is just a mess.
Yes.
Oh. You can go online and look if you haven't.
And it's going to take a while. Like in the book, it will take a while for that to heal, to for the swelling to go down. Because I think for the first, few weeks, he couldn't see because his eyes were still so swollen.
Roger's character, as I started really thinking about what he goes through, it's horrible. Like,
it's like poor thing.
He goes through a lot, but then so did Jamie.
Yeah. One of the things that was very well depicted was the post-traumatic stress that Bree was going through, the level of depression that she was experiencing, that kind of spacing out that she was doing, is very consistent with someone who's been through a trauma, who's been attacked. But the being able to flip-flop back and forth between, being happy in one moment and then suddenly just drifting off into nothingness next. So like that table scene when she was sitting there and she was asking about Jamie on one hand, and then during the time of her question being answered, she just kind of flattened. And I thought that that was well written, well acted, and very realistic. And the fact that Lizzie mentioned her having nightmares and crying in her sleep. They don't show her doing a lot of crying, but that is consistent. And then her being conflicted, of course, about being pregnant and watching the birds.
Her wounds, when she came into the room with Lizzie at the inn, were well done. The scrapes on her back, if you remember, Bonnet's hits her across the face, that bloodied her nose. Then she landed on her belly and he pulls her toward him. But then after we hear the sounds, she ends up on her back. And that's when I think she got the scrapes on her shoulder blades, and down her back. So, and the blood on her shift, the trauma that she experienced, I thought those were all very, very good. And I've already said, I thought Roger's beating was completely believable. The one thing that I thought was a little strange was the popping in of possible malaria for Lizzie. Yes, she does have it in the books, but she had no symptoms of malaria that she illustrated. And it might have, maybe they just didn't have time. They may have filmed it and it got cut. But it seemed kind of odd that it would even be mentioned because we didn't see any evidence at all. Malaria is, it has very distinctive symptoms, and it shouts itself to the world. But none of that was portrayed. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That seemed to be shoehorned a little bit in.
Just to add a little history to that, one of the reasons malaria is one of the reasons that they used African slaves,
Yes.
simply because of the sickle cell trait leaves us less susceptible to malaria, and malaria in the where they were growing a lot of the crops was killing off the indigenous people that they were using. And so then they brought in people who, it wasn't, I don't think it was intentional. It may have been a happy accident, but happy for them anyway. But it's just because in my family, half of us have the trait, half of us don't. We also lived in East Africa. So those of us without the trait all got malaria, and those of us with the trait did not.
Yes.
And that is because of the shape of the red blood cells makes it impossible for the plasmodium to live.
Did you get it?
I actually have 2 traits, so I don't have it.
Which is fascinating because you have American Indian, which is very susceptible, right?
Yeah.
And
well, this is the thing.
African.
What it is, the plasmodium is a round parasite, and it fits perfectly in a round red blood cell. When it's sickled, the red blood cell kind of sickles, and so therefore the actual parasite can't live in it, and therefore that sickling protects people. And it just so happens they also have a thalassemia from the Italian Mediterranean part of my family, and I have the sickle cell trait from the African part of my family. So I was very well protected. Not everyone in my family was, though. I mean, my father, who does not have sickle cell trait, did get malaria. And every time he gets a fever, anytime anyone in my family gets a fever, you always have to think possibly, because it is a recurrent infection. It can just go dormant and then come back. And that's why Lizzie gets sick over and over again in the books. In this, they keep mentioning her sickness, but they don't really say that it's cyclical the way malaria is.
Yeah, 200 million people a year get malaria in this world.
Wow.
It's
there's several strains that are very, very, very dangerous and cause encephalitis. And so therefore, that's why one of the best charities to malaria infested places are mosquito nets, because that's how it's spread.
I don't like the blood and guts stuff, but I love learning new stuff, and you guys always drop the knowledge.
I do find it interesting that you don't like blood and guts, but you couldn't wait for Jamie to beat the crap out of Roger.
Yeah, well, you see, Roger was symbolizing to me all of the crap that we had been shown in certain episodes. So, so Roger was like the voodoo doll that we were going to stick pins in.
My point exactly. What did Roger ever do? He is the most put upon character. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
I'm going to
love you.
Bye, Karmen.
Bye.
Ooh.
I just thought that was
slurping, you say.
that the whole episode was filled with those pearls, that were thrown out before us, and I just hope
it's like a pearl necklace almost.
Yes, it's like a pearl necklace. Yeah. That was one by one strung out to us, and we're gathering them up and holding them next to our hearts.
Because I don't know how to cook, so I only get to eat good stuff when my mother is in town.
Oh goodness!
Does she make traditional Jamaican stuff?
Oh yes. We had goat head soup.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Isn't it?
Oh my
I
God.
love goat head soup.
In Kenya,
that's making me think of Mr. Willoughby.
Oh yeah, because in Kenya the organ meat and the brain are for men, and so my father used to sneak it to me because I wasn't allowed to drink
because
it.
You know that my mother, one of my mother's specialties is what is called cow cod soup. You know what the cow cod is?
No.
Wait, the cow cud?
Cod.
Like,
you mean the udders?
No, cow cod. That's a soup for men.
What?
It's their balls. The cow's balls.
Interesting.
Well, actually, it's more than the balls. It's all of the equipment down there.
Everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they put it in a soup, cow cod soup. It's delicious.
Interesting. I bet it is,
I
but I
will
mean,
take your
still.
word for that.
Yeah, I think I will too. Because we're supposed to give them virility.
Virility. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're considered an aphrodisiac, so.
Exactly.
Does it work?
Well,
I don't know. I'm not a man.
It's
Although I'm always called sir on the phone, but I don't even correct them. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Because you have a lovely deep voice. You know what's fun for me? When you laugh, because I work with
I have a very dirty laugh.
well, but when I'm editing, I work with the sound waves, and your laugh is like boom, 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 boom. Like if I look at the sound waves, I'm like, there's Catherine laughing. There's Catherine laughing. There's Catherine laughing.